We want to go back to the parable of the wheat and the tares, and want to take time again tonight to read beginning at verse 24. And we're trying tonight to move into the heart of the passage itself, the parable itself, and to begin to wrestle with the key concept of the parable. So Matthew chapter 13, beginning at verse 24. Then we will move down to verse 37, which is where he gives his explanation of the parable. It says, "Another parable he put forth to them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, An enemy has done this." Go to verse 37. He answered and said to them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Let's pray together. Jesus, we're not interested in interpreting and finding what we desire. We're interested in truth, your will, your insight, what you want to say to us. And Lord, you know how fixed we are in our minds, how already established in our thought process we seem to be often. And you alone know how hard it is to get through to us. But because you know us so well, you can communicate to us so well. So go beyond anything a preacher could say, and let the movement of the Spirit of God take your word and make it alive in our lives tonight, that we might know what you're calling us to and be the people you desire us to be. So we open ourselves to that, God, and whatever you need to do to get that done, have at it in our lives tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You realize the whole chapter is about the parables of the kingdom. And what he's doing, he distinctly describes in verse 11 as giving us the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. In other words, he's very interested in telling his disciples, revealing to them exactly what is going on in the kingdom of heaven, which you understand is brand new in that hour. Because John the Baptist has just proclaimed, repent, the kingdom is at hand. He's the first one to announce it. Jesus has now picked up on it and is preaching that as well. So the kingdom has just arrived. It's all brand new. The new covenant, Jesus is the only one who's got it at this point. And it won't happen until Pentecost that it will spread. But the whole kingdom idea is just now being established. And he's really interested in his disciples understanding that. And of course, by this time, in the church age, all the information we've got, you should have a thorough understanding of exactly what the kingdom is all about. And you should be the kingdom itself. Nod your heads. Thank you. So, he's giving us the mysteries of the kingdom. Now, the mysteries, as you know, are those things that you cannot possibly understand unless someone who knows explains it to you. So obviously, Jesus knows because he's experiencing it, and he is going to explain it to the disciples. And the way he chooses to explain it is parables. Now, parables are really an illustration taken from, in this case, nature, which most of his parables are. So he's giving us an illustration. Now, here's the difficulty with an illustration. Think this through. An illustration doesn't stand on all four. What we mean by that, you can't push it to its limits. What we mean by that is you can't go to every detail in an illustration and say, oh, that's exactly the way it is, because then it wouldn't be an illustration, it would be the thing you're trying to illustrate. Example. If you know thoroughly what a door is, you've experienced doors all your life, you've come in and out of a door all your existence, but you've never seen a window. And we would try to explain to you what a window is like, and we would explain that it's like a door. Well, it's not like a door at all. Oh, it has similarities, but a window has no doorknob. You don't swing a door on its hinges. You don't swing a window on its hinges as you do a door. And yet there are some illustrative points that make a window like a door. Light comes through the window into the house, so it is an entrance into the house as a door is, but it's not exactly like a door, because if it was exactly like a door, it wouldn't be a window, it would be a door. So you can't take his parables and say, oh, all of this is just exactly. No, he's trying to make a point. So that's the danger of the parables. And we preachers are really bad at this, because we just like to go off on these things and just make up all kinds of stuff. So I apologize for all the preachers. So what we want to do is we want to come to the heart of the parable, the concept of the parable. What is he? Not the circumference, not the minor points, not the things on the side. We don't want to get picky. We want to stay in the center heart of the parable itself and get the concept, because he's trying to illustrate to us the kingdom. What is the heart concept of the parable itself? You got to stay with the main concept. Obviously, the main concept has to do with progression. Obviously, he's talking about a growth process. Obviously, he's talking about planting. He's talking about growing. And in the midst of all of that growing, something happens. And he's talking about a harvest. So the whole thing is in a process. He's not talking about a specific moment, although there are specific moments in the parable. But the overall concept is all about what's going on in the flow of your life. He's not interested in going back to, 25 years ago I knelt at an altar and got my name written in the Lamb's Book of Life, so everything is settled. That's not the parable. The parable is, what's happened in the last 25 years? How have you progressed? What is taking place within your life? And what are you turning into? So the whole thing is in a progression and in a growth. Which brings up several neat ideas, and that is that it isn't, 25 years ago or 35 years ago or back when I was a teenager, I did so-and-so, so I'm out. There is no event in the past that's put you out. As there's no event in the past that puts you in. Because this is bigger than one event 25 years ago, 35 years ago. This is about what has been progressing in your life. What are you becoming? Where are you going? What is the shape of your life going to be like? Which also brings up the startling reality that you might be able to change. Because it isn't over yet and the harvest isn't here. And something new might actually be planted into your life. And you might actually have revelation. And truth might come to you. And the harvest hasn't happened yet. So there is a possibility of adjustment in your life that you could literally become. It's not too late. That's good news. So I'm trying to say to you that the very heart of the parable then brings us back to the idea of progression, growth, who you're becoming, what's happening in your life, and what is developing. Be concerned about that, he says, because the kingdom is concerned about that. So this is not about trying to get you to the altar and sign your name on the dotted line and that's it. This is about a development that's going on within you. We are really concerned about the shape of your existence as it begins to develop. Amen. So, that's the concept that we're going to go after. Now, we're going to go after this in light of the tares. So our subject in that growth process is going to be the tares. We're going to analyze the tares. Tonight we're going to look at the tares, the start. We are also going to analyze the tares, the system. And we're also going to analyze the tares, the settlement. This could be a 6-month deal. I'm not sure. But this is the outline that we're going to try to get into. Tonight we're looking at the tares, the start, and we're only going to start on the start. Because there's a lot to it. The tares, the start. In the tares, the start, we're going to go after 3 ideas in the concept. One of the ideas that he presents to us is the adversary, which we want to begin on tonight. Another idea, the adversary, by the way, this is all out of verse 25, where he says, an enemy came, the adversary. Also, we're going to look at the idea of the artful. He says, while men slept, an enemy came. We're also going to look at the association, where he says in verse 25, an enemy came, while men slept, an enemy came, sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. So that's where we're headed. All right, let's back up. We're going to go after the tares, the start, the adversary. An enemy came. If you would go to Jesus and ask him if he believed in the devil, I'm not talking the force of the devil. I'm not talking the influence of the devil. I'm talking about the person of the devil. I am absolutely convinced that Jesus would say, absolutely, I know thee, oh boy. That in the mind of Christ, there was a belief that there was an actual entity who had a mind, had emotion, and had a will, who was a fallen angel, who was the right-hand man of God and fell, and that individual, in the twisting of his character and life, that individual fit the picture of the tare perfectly. And that Jesus believed that there was a master mind behind all sin and tragedy, destruction that's going on in your life. That none of this is just an accident, that things don't just happen, that people don't just kind of end up in sin, that it's not just, well, I didn't mean to, but I don't know what happened, kind of a deal. That somebody is actually plotting and planning and blinding and manipulating and sticking their fingers into the middle of the history and structure of your experience, and is manipulating you to get done what he wants to get done. And there is an enemy, and it's not an accident, and his name is the devil. Now, we realize that the devil is a fallen angel, so he's not equal with God. We've got that down. We understand that there's not 2 equal powers, good and evil, and they are battling it out. We understand that's not biblically true. We understand that God's sovereign, almighty, powerful, omni-God is all sufficient. The devil is not in that category by any means at all. He is a created being. God is not. He had a start. There was a time he wasn't, and yet he was created. God has always been. He is not equal in power to God. We understand that. He is not omnipresent. The devil is not omnipresent. The devil is not omnipresent. The devil is not omnipresent. He's a fast mover, but he's not omnipresent. The real person of the devil has probably never ever really worked on you, because he can't be everywhere at one time. He has helpers. We got that. There are demons, fallen angels that came with him. We understand that. Do they multiply? As far as we know, not. Does every individual have a demon assigned to him? Have no idea. Don't care. Doesn't matter. All we know is there is a mastermind behind the evil that's attacking and going on in your life. And it's not accidental. And this mastermind has a plot. He's not just a force. He's a thinking personality. And again, he's not equal with God. So you've got sovereign God Jehovah and cockroach devil. He's probably more powerful than you are, but he's not as powerful as God. He may be more powerful than you and me put together, but he's not more powerful than God. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Don't give him too much credit. He's not omniscient, all-knowing. He is not. He doesn't know everything. He doesn't know what you're going to do next. He's second-guessing you at best. So you have the possibility of playing all kinds of tricks on him because he thinks you're going to do one thing when you do another. Because you are, well, we won't go into that. So here he is. He's not omniscient. He's not omnipresent. He's not omniscient. He's not all-powerful, omnipotent. He's none of those things that God is. So let's keep him in his place. He is an adversary, to be sure, and we don't treat him lightly, but let's not get carried away and find him under every rock. Jesus describes him as an individual who plants tares. Now, here's where the illustration, the parable, breaks down, and you don't dare push it too far. If you go, and we told you this a couple Saturdays ago, if you go to the Jewish Talmud, which is a commentary that the Jews of Jesus' day wrote on the Old Testament, and you study their concept of the tare, you will discover that the tare was a good wheat. It was not a bad wheat or bad seed that was planted and started bad and was always poisonous. It started out as a good seed. The parable breaks down at that point, because if that's true, then an enemy did not come at night and plant it. It was planted, but the enemy did come and do what the enemy does best within that which is righteous and good. And he came and twisted it. And the Jewish Talmud, in the Jewish thought process, knew that a tare was a good wheat. Get this concept. Was a good wheat that started out good, started out as a wheat, started out all right, but in the growth process, something happened in the growth that twisted it and made it poisonous until the very heart of the tare became poison. And that where a tare became a tare was not in the planting session, it was in the growth session. Now, whether you know it or not, that fits our theology perfectly. It fits what Paul writes in Romans chapter 5. Because he basically tells us that by one man's disobedience, everybody fell into sin. But by one man's obedience, everybody was justified. So you were not born a sinner. Careful of your language here. You were not born a sinner. You were born justified in the eyes of God. You were born right. If you'd have died when you were a baby, you would have gone to heaven because you were righteous. But someplace in the growth process of your life, you did exactly what Adam did. You blew it. And that nobody will be able to say, I had this idea that I was going to be able to go up to the judgment bar of God and say, not my fault. There's this Adam guy. And of course, Adam would say, not my fault. There's this Eve person. And she'd say, not my fault. It's God. He's the one that created me. But I found out that isn't true. That the guy who's to blame for what's going on in my life is this guy, because I made choices. And I made bad choices. And those choices were not just choices I made out of the blue. There was an enemy who came. You see, we really understand, do we not, that there is a physical world that we're dealing with, and we all deal with that all the time, and we become enamored with that. In fact, we are so sufficiently wrapped up in the physical world that lots of us get to the place where we don't recognize anything but a physical world. We deal with physical things all the time. So we understand physical. That's reality for us. But you do know that there is a spiritual world. It is unseen, absolutely. There is a seen world and there's an unseen world. And the unseen world is just as real, dear people, as the seen world. In fact, it may be more real. Because what's going on is the unseen world is playing itself out on the stage of your physical existence. And your physical existence does not exist just on its own, but is receiving the input and the influence of the unseen world that's playing itself out in your actions, in what you do, how you respond physically, and the situation that you find yourself in. Example, you do something to me. What happens to me? There are all of these feelings that begin to rise up inside of me. What are those feelings, those attitudes? My face gets red. My insides I begin to feel, there begins to be we call it anger. There begins to be this. What is that? We'll reach in, grab hold of it, pull it out, and let's analyze it. Well, you can't. Why? Because it's unseen. Well, just take it, bottle it up, and stick it in your hip pocket. You can't, because why? It's unseen. Well, it's real. I understand it's real, but it's unseen. And as that unseen world begins to play itself out on my physical world, you know what I end up doing? Doubling up my fist and socking you in the mouth, which becomes a very physical expression of the unseen world that's going on inside of me. That is happening in 1,000 different ways all the time in your life. And if you are a normal type person, you will turn to somebody and say, I don't know why I did that. I have no idea why I said that. that just slipped out. Could it be that there is an unseen world, spiritual in its impact, that is playing itself out in your physical existence, and you are a pawn to that spiritual world that is simply taking you and using you for the demonstration of what it wants to do and be? And that behind all of that, from this viewpoint of the tear, there is a mastermind who is manipulating you and your circumstance and your life, and you think you're doing it, you think you're in control, you think it's your choice, when all the time it's not your choice at all. You're being used. That's an interesting discussion, isn't it? Let me read you a scripture that is always just, wow. I've just marveled at this scripture. Oh, you can turn to it if you want to. Acts chapter 2. It's in the middle of the sermon where Peter is explaining Pentecost. And as he begins to explain this Pentecost thing, he, in verse 22, 23, and 24, gives us insight into what's going on. And this verse has always intrigued me. Verse 23, he says, him, meaning Jesus, being delivered by the determined purpose and foreknowledge of God, you have taken by lawless hands, have crucified and put to death. Now, when you begin to analyze that verse, you begin to find out there's three dynamics going on. One dynamic is there's the determined purpose and foreknowledge of God. In other words, he's saying the crucifixion was determined by, planned by, and planted by the foreknowledge and determined will of God himself. So if you want to know who's to blame for the crucifixion of Jesus, who nailed him to a tree, it was the Father. That's what he says. But at the same time, he goes on and says, oh, but let me give you this insight. You have taken by lawless hands. So there have been men, Pharisees, scribes, who've been strutting around, acting like we pulled this off. So there's a bunch of guys who had committee meetings, made plans, hey, got the 30 pieces of silver, got Judas involved, at the Garden of Gethsemane, planned when they were going to do it at night, planned how they were going to blackmail Pilate, got the whole thing done, and when the crucifixion was over, they were standing over on the side, wiping their hands, saying, woo, good job, we knew what we were doing on that. And they think they did this when there was a spiritual world with a sovereign God who was planning it out all the time, and they were pawns in the actions of an almighty God. At the same time, there is the lawless hands, which is this Satan, which is this devil, which is this evil, this enemy, who also is involved. Because he was involved in manipulating the Pharisees and the scribes, pulling the strings to get them. So while they thought they were doing what they wanted to do, the devil was influencing them, and God was over it all. And isn't it interesting? We strut around thinking we're doing what we want to do. And all the time there's this unseen world that has been using us. And maybe tonight you only have two choices when it comes right down to it. You're either going to be used by the enemy or by Jesus. Because the spiritual world, unseen as it is going to play itself out in your physical existence. And the whole parable is about not a moment, an altar of prayer where you say, okay, God, I'm sorry, write my name down. It isn't about that. It's about the day in and day out interaction of this spiritual world into your life that's going to make the difference in the insides of your being of what kind of person you're going to be. And here's where we are on our knees to you, because Ephesians chapter 6, Paul screams at us and says, guys, we do not fight against flesh and blood. See, you are not my problem. I thought you were. I really did. You look like you're my problem. And if I could just get you straightened out, everything would be okay. And since I couldn't get you straightened out, I got a shotgun and blew your stinking head off. And so I thought my problem was gone. But what I discovered is somebody took your face and put it back on. It was a little different, but you came back into my life, and I had the same problem with someone else. Because he says we're not fighting with each other. We are fighting against principalities and powers. So your problem is not a habit. Your problem is not alcohol. Your problem is not drugs. Your problem is not anger. Your problem is not. I'm not your problem. Your problem is there is a spiritual, unseen world that's playing itself out in your life and is shaping you. And the truth of the matter is, I don't have the wisdom, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the insight, I don't have a ghost of a chance. I am being buffeted. Have you ever just crouched down and looked up and said, I think somebody out there hates me? Because there's all of this stuff that's totally, I didn't have any, whoa! It wasn't like I planned this or willed it. That there are things going on that I didn't get to choose my parents. So if this whole spiritual world that's shaping me into a tare or a wheat is bigger than I am, what chance do I have? You have a choice on who's going to influence and shape your life. Well, if I run to an altar of prayer and make that choice, does that solve that problem? No, because you're going to have to make that choice tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. And what we'd like for you to do, and what I want to do, is so sufficiently make that choice that when I become older and senile, I'm still choosing him because I'm made such a pattern of that in my life that it's just the consistency of who I am, because I'm a wheat shaped by the good sower. Jesus, don't have a chance without you. Absolutely don't have a chance without you. And God, in the name of Jesus, I don't want to be fickle. I'm tired of in and out. I'm tired of sometimes I'll let you influence me, sometimes I don't. I'm tired of sometimes you get to shape me, sometimes I'm under satanic evil. The tear thing comes out. In the name of Jesus, can you begin to do something so strong in my life through the nature of God within me, that all the poisonous tear stuff is gone. And I'm the kingdom under your influence. You are moving my heart. And that as it was with Jesus, after he was filled with the Spirit, went into the wilderness and was involved in 40 days and 40 nights of starvation and spiritual war. The devil didn't shape him. Through all of that, you shaped him. And he came out a good wheat, shaped by God, fed by the Spirit, led by the Spirit, grew in the Spirit. I've got to have that, Jesus. And in my day in and day out circumstances, with all the kind of stuff that comes at me and all the things that bombard me, are you in the middle of all that, God? And could I literally be, could everything that's happening to me be the hands of God shaping my life into the wheat? Forgive me for my belly aching and my complaining when I should have been surrendering and seeking and embracing. Because you're trying to do something in my life in spite of the enemy. I choose you, Jesus. I choose you. I choose you tonight. I choose you. You have chosen me. But Jesus, I choose you. Thank you. Heads are bowed. Choice, dear people, choice. You can continue being shaped into a tear. It's not too late. Oh, allow Him. Allow Him to take the twist out of your life. Want to join me in seeking Him?